I went through tons of databases looking up all kinds of arcades, leading me down a rabbit hole where everything was telling me that this system simply did not exist. Hi, my name is Shane Lewis. I review video games for a living, and I've also spent a lot of time working around film and television. In major motion pictures, you've probably seen characters hanging around, playing video games in the background, and never gave it a second thought. But to a gamer, these scenes often leap off the screen, either with how accurate they are or how very wrong they are. But these scenes are not always straightforward and can be extremely challenging for filmmakers. Today, I'm going to talk about some of those challenges and even reveal some surprising secrets that most people don't notice about their favorite movies. The 40-Year-Old Virgin, 2005, directed by Judd Apatow. This sequence is part of a montage of scenes showing what Steve Carell's character Andy does with all of his free time. He's the titular 40-year-old virgin, so of course, to play into the stereotype, he plays a lot of video games.
Get some road burn, come on! Come on, sucker!
So the game Andy is playing is called Tony Hawk Underground 2. Specifically, he's playing on the Barcelona level. I think one of the reasons this game was picked was because it featured widescreen support to match the large widescreen TV that the character is using. Surrounding his TV, we can see a number of gaming devices, a PlayStation, a Nintendo Entertainment System, and several controllers. But one specifically sticks out for me, the Ultra Racer 64 controller. I actually used to own this and reviewed it in a video a while back. It's very unique and something you'd buy exclusively for playing racing video games. Though what really jumps out in the scene isn't what's around the TV, it's what Andy is sitting on.
Sweet video game chair.
You might think this is a prop made just for the movie to show how into video games Andy is, but this isn't fake. It's real. In a scene early on, you can even see the logo on the back of the chair. It's called the Ultimate Game Chair. Around the time of the production, this company released multiple styles of their chair, including the Renegade Game Chair. They featured rumble, speakers, and some did include controls. Unfortunately, this company doesn't really exist anymore, probably because the chairs seem to cost more than the video game consoles themselves. The Ultimate Game Chair makes another cameo later on when Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen's characters named David and Cal are playing a video game together.
That's just so not fair that you have blades in your... Ha!
I'm telling you, man, I feel great.
So this is a great time to introduce a concept I like to call mock gaming. Mock gaming is when a character is playing a video game in a scene, but the actor can't possibly be producing the gameplay being shown on screen. Instead, they're showing either pre-recorded gameplay, or maybe it's all done with separate insert shots and the actor is never shown with the game in the same frame. Sometimes, the game being displayed doesn't even exist. It's all movie magic to make it seem like a character is playing a game that the actor isn't. This scene of David and Cal playing Mortal Kombat Deception is a perfect example of mock gaming. These actors are not creating the gameplay being shown on the TV. How do I know this? Well, the biggest clue is that Cal's using a Nintendo 64 controller, a third-party one specifically produced by Mad Catz called the Advanced Control Pad. Never used that controller. But anyway, Mortal Kombat Deception never came out for the Nintendo 64. What's being shown is most likely the Xbox or PS2 release. There was a GameCube version, but it came out after they had already begun filming the movie. That controller he's using cannot possibly be connecting to the system that's playing this game. This is pre-recorded gameplay. To Seth Rogen's credit, if they were playing a fighting game on the Nintendo 64, this could possibly be the way you'd handle the controller. His one hand is gripping the center, while the other hand is hovering over the face buttons, which matches up perfectly with where all the punch and kick buttons would be if they were playing Mortal Kombat 4 on the Nintendo 64. Paul, though, he's using the chair's attached joystick, but he's completely avoiding the secondary joystick to his left and using just the right. He's using half a controller and simply doesn't have access to all the buttons he would need to play a fighting game like Mortal Kombat. Surprisingly though, an Xbox console can be seen in shot with two controllers resting on top. But on a film set, the actors are given specific props and items to use. Everything else around them has to be left untouched for a variety of reasons. Continuity being a big one. If actors started picking up and putting down everything in a scene, every time they would cut to a different angle, things would jump all over the place. Pre-recorded gameplay also helps editors, otherwise it would be a nightmare to be cutting back and forth between scenes when the actors keep changing levels, characters, or anything else that would radically change as the game progresses. But what's nice about this scene, and what sells it for most viewers, is that Seth Rogen comments on what is actually happening on screen in the game.
I'm ripping your head off right now. It's off, and now I'm throwing it at your body.
Shaun of the Dead, 2004, directed by Edgar Wright.
Hey man, listen, top left.
Uh-huh.
I was gonna say, reload?
I'm on it.
Since...
Oh, nice shot.
Thanks.
2 seconds.
You all right, Noodle?
This is a perfect depiction of friends watching each other play a game. Ed, played by Nick Frost, is in the middle of a game of TimeSplitters 2 on PlayStation 2, while his roommate Shaun, played by Simon Pegg, is trying to have a real conversation with him. But rather than get mad Ed isn't listening to him, Shaun gets sucked into Ed's gameplay. Everything Shaun's saying, from giving suggestions to commenting on great moments, is spot on. And the actual gameplay is portrayed so well here that it's impossible to say that this is mock gaming. And if it is, well, they've done an amazing job making it look seamless. It's not just how Ed plays the game, but what he does when he isn't playing. When he picks up his phone call, he actually pauses the game, and we know he paused the game because we can hear the game's pause sound effect. When he picks the controller back up, you hear him unpause the game and go back to work.
Listen.
Ed.
This is a level of realism that usually isn't given to scenes with video games. It really feels like they just gave Nick Frost a PS2 controller and told him to play. He really captures that authentic feeling of someone paying more attention to their game than to the people around them. And he has to do all of this in character and still react to his fellow actors. It's really impressive. We return to this living room in a later scene, and it appears Ed hasn't moved all day. He's playing the same game, and we can see over his shoulder when he pauses and unpauses his game to talk to Shaun. And the audio we hear lines up with this as well.
You gonna thank me then?
For what?
Tidying up.
Well, it doesn't look that tidy.
I had a few beers when I finished.
And it's this scene here that tells me Nick Frost is actually playing the game.
I know this is really short notice and everything, but could you possibly do me a table for 2 for tonight at about 8?
No, sorry, we just gave away the last table.
If you look in the background, you can see that he accidentally pauses the game a little too early before his line, and he quickly unpauses before trying to time it out again. But when the camera continues to pull out, we can audibly hear him pause the game before suddenly appearing behind Simon Pegg.
I thought you said it was all okay.
Yeah.
You didn't book it, did you, Shaun?
No.
Crazy attention to detail. Did this filmmaking choice make it a nightmare for continuity on set and in the editing room? Oh, I bet it did. But it makes for a gaming scene free of distractions and full of fun. Mallrats, 1995, directed by Kevin Smith. Brody, played by Jason Lee, has woken up next to his girlfriend Renee, played by Shannon Doherty, and immediately is playing video game hockey without even getting out of bed.
What the hell are you doing?
Finishing my game.
What's pretty accurate about this scene is that if you were in the middle of a level or match in a game back then, you probably didn't want to turn off your console because you'd lose your progress. So it was normal to pause, turn off your TV, and come back to the console later on to keep playing. It's totally believable that Brody would be picking up a game partway through like this. To add to the realism, they even have the score show up on the screen, matching up exactly with his line.
No. You promised me breakfast.
Breakfast? Breakfast schmreakfast. Look at the score, for God's sake. I'm only in the middle of the second and I'm winning 12-2. Breakfast come and go, Renee.
So at first glance, this looks great. You believe he's really playing the game. But the problem is, he's not. When Brody wakes up, he appears to be playing his Sega Genesis and is holding a Genesis gamepad. If we look at the cartridge closer, we can see the cart that is plugged into the system is from Electronic Arts. Now, even though we can't see the cartridge front image art, we can see two things that help identify it. the yellow tag that was built in Electronic Arts custom cartridges, and the red spine image. My first guess was that this is specifically EA's NHL 94, because everything matches up perfectly, but the TV is showing advanced 3D graphics that Sega Genesis simply wasn't capable of. The game we're actually seeing? NHL All-Star Hockey for the Sega Saturn by Sega Sports. So there's no way his console or controller is actually connected to the gameplay we see featured. It's all for show. The game and console not matching up isn't the only problem in this scene. I didn't think it was possible to feature this specific game in this movie because NHL All-Star Hockey came out a few weeks before Mallrats hit theaters. So I did some digging and discovered that during production, Kevin Smith, who's a fan of EA's NHL games, wanted to use one of their games in the movie, but the post-production team on the film got in touch with Sega, who wanted them to use their new Sega Sports release in some kind of marketing push. The end result being that this early footage of the game was used instead of the original game they had planned. This is why we're seeing a different console with a different game in the shot. This is confirmed on the DVD commentary for the movie.
We originally had the EA Sports NHL 94 or 95 version in the film. The good folks over in production or post-production hooked up some sort of bizarre arcane deal with Sega and said, you know, if you include our version of hockey, we'll put you on our Sega tours. And they were going to feature us. Well, in the end, they pimped out on us and they did not feature us, and we had changed it all for nothing.
Product marketing in movies? I'm shocked.
You say that like it's bad.
So everything we've seen so far are games that can be played at home. But what does it look like when you try to film games in the arcade? Robocop 2, 1990, directed by Irvin Kershner.
Isn't this a school day?
In this scene, we see a lot of actors, but most notably, Robocop played by Peter Weller and Stephen Lee playing the police officer Duffy. They're in a shady arcade. Now, when I see scenes like this, I need to watch them at least twice. Once for the story, and the second time to scope out the background and see what games I can spot. Alright, let's take a look. There's Bad Dude, Sly Spy, Vigilante, Heavy Barrel, and a bunch of Slapshot arcades. Now, these cabinets actually all have one thing in common. They're all games that were published by Data East. This arcade is entirely branded with Data East to the point that they've covered up what is clearly a Konami logo with two huge Data East stickers. There's also a scene showing some broken cabinets, one of which is a heavily destroyed Dragon's Lair system with the logo blacked out with paint. It seems like they went to great lengths to show no brands except for what Data East owned licenses to. So what made Data East so special? Well, if I had to guess, I'd say it was probably because of their existing relationship with the Robocop franchise, as they were the ones who released the original Robocop arcade game. One arcade game from Data East, by the way, that doesn't show up anywhere in this scene, probably because it would have looked really strange in a world where the actual Robocop exists. But why leave competitors' arcade cabinets in the scene and take the extra time to cover up their logos? Well, I think they were struggling to fill the arcade up because I get the impression that they were scraping the bottom of the barrel to supply the production with enough machines.
You're a rotten cop.
Just before Duffy hits the floor, you can see an arcade cabinet of The Real Ghostbusters by Data East. Cool, right? Only that's not the real Ghostbusters. The real Ghostbusters upright arcade system looked like this. It has 3 sets of controls for up to 3 players. This system in the movie appears to have one yoke-style controller and a foot pedal at the bottom right. So my initial thought was that this was some bizarre modified version of Bally Midway's famous Spy Hunter from 1983, which features similar controls. But the arcade system itself looks totally different, and the yoke controller also doesn't look the same. But then I looked closer at the screen. It's showing a green map of the United States, a map that didn't show up in Ghostbusters or Spy Hunter.
Good eyes, Murphy.
Good as money can buy.
I went through tons of databases looking up all kinds of arcades, leading me down a rabbit hole where everything was telling me that this system simply did not exist. So I looked up a list of Data East games that were unreleased and came across a car game called Bandit. The only visual evidence of this game's existence is gameplay posted to YouTube by Phil Bennett. I contacted Phil, who confirmed that the footage he captured was directly from a real arcade board he personally had his hands on. So, I compared the green map on the screen in the Robocop movie to Phil's Bandit footage, and they were a perfect match. And hey, would you look at that? Bandit happens to look a lot like Spy Hunter, don't you think? Probably explains why the system seems to feature the same controls. This means that what you're likely seeing here in Robocop 2 is a prototype or test unit of Bandit, an incredibly rare system that to my knowledge has never appeared in public outside of this film appearance here. This lost game is hidden in plain sight in a major motion picture franchise, and nobody noticed it for decades. Besides me and Phil, because Phil found it as well too. Grosse Pointe Blank, 1997, directed by George Armitage. John Cusack is playing an assassin named Martin Blank who returns to his childhood home to find it has been replaced with a convenience store. Don't you hate when that happens? And it's run entirely by one clerk played by Duffy Taylor. But if you're like me, there's only one thing that you're paying attention to in this scene.
What are you doing here?
Way in the back behind Martin is a Doom 2 arcade cabinet. This cabinet is fascinating because it does not exist, and in my opinion, it simply could not be possible. Doom 2 is a heavily influential first-person shooter game developed by id Software for PC in 1994. But just because something is great on your DOS computer doesn't mean it works in arcades. Arcade games are designed to be timed, shorter experiences. Doom 2 was not made with an arcade mode included, and it was not a short experience. On your home computer, you could play for hours on end without dying. Heck, the first time I played Doom 2, I spent almost an hour looking for every possible secret I could find. That's something you simply really wouldn't do in an arcade game. Another reason this Doom 2 cabinet couldn't actually play Doom 2 is the controls. Here's a shot of the manual for Doom 2 on PC, and here are the controls the cabinet has. There just doesn't seem to be enough. How do you strafe left and right? How do you switch your weapons quickly and easily? How do you activate speed to move faster, which is essential in some levels of Doom 2? You would be totally unable to play Doom 2 properly with these controls. But despite this, later we do see Doom 2 apparently being played on the cabinet by the clerk. He's caught up in a fast-paced game and unaware of the firefight taking place in the middle of the store between Martin and another hitman. Now that we see the game running, it's pretty clear that this is pre-recorded. There's even a sequence where the player's health goes to 0, but instead of a death screen, it instantly cuts to clearly different gameplay with full health, armor, and ammo, and holding a different weapon. At the very end of the scene, when Martin runs out of the door moments before the store explodes, we can see what looks like an image frozen on the screen with warped-looking video. That's likely some kind of recorded video format at the time that was paused, likely a VHS tape. They recorded gameplay of Doom 2 running and just played it back on the cabinet's display. And the actor is just button mashing. Another shining example of mock gaming. So, did the production team make a cabinet from scratch? Probably not. I'd say this is most likely a converted Kung Fu Master arcade. The shape of the cabinet and even the buttons and controls line up. It's a perfect match. And Kung Fu Master North America was released by Data East during the mid-80s, meaning that someone scrubbed off all the Data East logos on the cabinet. Almost feels like retaliation for Robocop 2.
You sold us out.
So, what have we learned today? Well, don't trust everything you see in movies. It may be easy to play video games, but showing them off in film comes with a unique set of challenges. It can be fun to point out when certain movies break reality, but we can also learn a lot about gaming history by digging into these scenes a little deeper.